opportunities to collaborate there. Talking a bit about Long Island City, we actually had an opportunity to meet with Hunters Point Civic and Hunters Point Park Conservancy yesterday. We've met with many of the electeds with State Parks, who does have upland, who owns the upland there. And so we've also been able to do a lot of outreach on that front to better understand how Long Island City is going to work for us. Long Island City is one of the highest density areas for the entire system, and we expect to get a lot of ridership from it. Close to 4,000 trips are expected per day to be coming out of Long Island City, and we expect that to drive not one but two separate routes on the system. This is very important because we rely on that ridership to help make ferries financially sustainable. It's important that they have ridership to support their operations. Transit is subsidized, transit is not going to pay for itself, but we still want to make smart decisions about how we plan our routes and how we plan looking at ridership. As a flag, we do want to mention Hunters Point South will remain in use. Hunters Point South is somewhat close to the Long Island City area, to the Long Island City landing that we're proposing, but it is a single slit landing, which means that only one ferry vessel can go in at a time. So we have vessels that come in almost every 10 minutes when we're at Hunters Point South in the peak hour when you combine both directions. So we already know that we're near capacity there. So it's really useful to look at Long Island City. So we'll talk through two different sites that we're thinking about that we've considered in the Long Island City area. One at Center Boulevard and one at 44th Drive. This image that you're looking at on the screen here is facing south. So you'll see here at the upper right-hand side is the existing Hunters Point South ferry landing. And then here at the northern end of the park by Center, at the end of Center Boulevard, is where we are proposing to place the Long Island City landing. There is an option at 44th Drive, but I want to flag some of the challenges that we've seen in the past really revolve around the walking environment. The walking environment from a lot of density to get to where a ferry landing is really needs to be in great shape. We saw at Hunters Point South in the very beginning, when it was still a construction site, that it was really challenged in one of the lowest performing ridership area landings in the city for our East River Ferry. In fact, it was one of the things that almost was looked at for elimination because it was such low ridership. As soon as construction finished, and as soon as the walking area was made pleasant, we saw ridership skyrocket and in fact surpassed the growth on all the other routes to be one of the highest locations in the city. So this is one of those lessons learned where we've learned that it's really important that in the very short run, as soon as you launch a ferry, that all of the stops have to have great upland amenities, great upland environments that really helps attract ridership to show the success of something. Having spoken with the community and working alongside with a lot of different folks, we do recognize and understand, though, that there's a lot of opportunity at 44th Drive in the long run. There are right now industrial and undeveloped uses there, and there's not a great sidewalk for you to go down 44th Drive. But we want to be sensitive to that and think about it in the future for other opportunities. So what we are proposing right now is to look at Center Boulevard as an option for the short run, with 44th Drive keeping in our mind as an option for further down the road. We'll talk about some of the specific designs in just a moment. But one of the things I do want to flag, and this is important for anyone who knows the Gantry State Park area, is that there are a lot of very soft shorelines. We want to be really sensitive about these. We want to make sure that when we talk about a ferry landing in Gantry State Park, people understand that we're talking about the northernmost end where there's a hardened esplanade and shoreline. This is important because the East River already has a lot of tidal action. It's really challenging to have a soft shoreline anywhere in the East River and prevent erosion, but we don't want to exacerbate any of those challenges by having a ferry that is landing there on a regular basis. So we've moved the landing as far away from those as possible. I also want to mention, again, with recreational boating, we know there's a lot of activity in and around Annabelle Basin, which is over here. Long Island City Boathouse, essential to their operations, and in fact they took me and probably 15 of my colleagues on the ferry team out. We went just to make sure we understood everything. They took us and we went and we paddled around Roosevelt Island, which was a very hands-on opportunity for us to learn. But we do recognize that we are looking at potentially having impacts on some of the recreational boating activities. And so what we have committed to is working with the recreational boating community as we bring on our operator in order to make sure that our operating procedures are consistent with safe practices. We want to make sure that where there are recreational boaters, that they can coexist with ferries. And lastly, for Queens, I want to talk about the Rockaway Route. This is a route, this does mirror the same stops that were made in the post-Sandy service. But I do want to flag here that what we are planning for the Rockaways is actually going to be an improvement in service because we're talking about full day service 7 days a week, and that's throughout the entire city. Throughout the city, we're talking about 7-day-a-week service. We've asked in an RFP for operations to invite people where operating hours start as early as 6:30 or as late as 10 p.m. That's the sort of window of opportunity that we have, and we have a little bit of flexibility there as well. And we've also invited them to tell us about the fare, which we have set at $2.75. The fare is a very important part to these new routes, and we want to make sure that everyone understands that we have a $2.75 fare, which is the same as the subway or bus. I will flag, however, that we're not going to be integrated with the MetroCard. The legacy MetroCard system, believe it or not, is over 20 years old now. They are expecting to phase this out in favor of the next generation of fare payment. That is a project of the MTAs, and they've encouraged us not to make further investments in the legacy MetroCard system. So at this point, we're going to build our own system that is designed to allow for cash payments, smartphone payments, credit cards. It'll be fully functional. And then what we will do is look forward to when they have a system at MTA so that we can collaborate with them and consider becoming an affiliate agency. Going back to the Rockaways and the specificity here, what we're looking at here is the bathymetric study. So again, this is the depth chart at the Rockaways at Beach 108th Street. One of the things that we've heard loud and clear from the Rockaway community is that we want to bring ferry service back as fast as possible. Beach 108th is where we had it. We know the site. We understand it. This is where we are proposing to put the ferry landing for the 2017 launch. And we'll talk in just a moment about some of the other opportunities in the Rockaways as well. This is a conceptual design, again, of what I had pointed out earlier. What you're looking at here are 3 vessel configurations, and I only flagged that we have different ways that ferries can actually land at these at the landings, so that we can accommodate a variety of vessel types. This isn't just for the regular service we provide, but making sure that in an emergency, if we needed to activate another kind of ferry, another kind of vessel, that we can do so. So we've been keeping a lot of that in mind. In the Rockaways, we've also got one of the only location where we're considering shuttle routes, understanding the unique geography of the Rockaway Peninsula. Some of our guiding assumptions when we were building out the ideas around shuttle routes in the Rockaways were to make sure that we were able to allow every bus to meet every ferry departure. And if we have approximately hourly departures, as we've requested in our RFP, then we said that our travel time could be around 20 minutes in either direction. So we are looking at shuttle routes in either direction that go as far as you can travel in about 20 minutes. And we are using existing bus stops as much as possible and targeting population density. This is one example of a western route that we've proposed from Beach 108th Street going as far west as Jacob Reese Park. These are conceptual, and I will flag that as we get in further conversations with our operator, we would have a better idea of how far out these would actually go and where they would specifically stop along the way in order to meet the ferries that would be departing from the Rockaways. On the eastern side, we've looked at what routes are possible, and at this point we think that Beach 67th Street is approximately the furthest distance that you can go. We have looked at options where you go straight out and don't make the left turn, but we think that we can pick up more population density if we do turn up on Beach 67th. And again, the distance is limited here by really the 20-minute factor, because we want to make sure that every bus does meet the ferry as it goes in and can actually bring people back out and make it in for the next departure. So it's important that we not try to make this too long, because that would create real challenges for operations. So on the whole, a lot of great stuff is happening. Certainly Queens is seeing many new landings, which is very exciting. And we're really excited to be pushing on this. Our community outreach, it says summer 15. It was really an ongoing process. We anticipate that not only will we be out with civic community organizations, with local groups now, but also as the project progresses, all the way through to the end of the project, which is probably going to be considered as we're operating. So once we bring an operator on board, we'll be out with the communities, understanding what the needs are. We'll continue to do so as we get things up and running. And this has been a really great opportunity for us to reach out citywide to many, many waterfront communities and everyone else to understand what we're doing. As far as the environmental review, as I had mentioned, we are in our scoping phase right now, and in fact, at this moment, if you care to, after this meeting, they're doing a presentation for the scoping hearing downstairs, where we have put all of our information together, and it's available at this website for the scoping documents. So anyone in the public and all organizations are welcome to comment on the record for the environmental review, which is underway at this point. We plan to have a service operator on board by this winter, so late this year, early next year, we plan to have finished procurement for the ferry services, so someone who will actually operate the ferry for us. And then we will also be going through our permitting process, so we need to permit our landings. That goes through the Army Corps of Engineers and Department of Environmental Conservation. All of these are the necessary steps that you need to go through in order to get the permits to put landings into the water. Final design and construction will begin in 2016, and so we will be able to actually see landings that get dropped into the water late 2016 so that we can be ready for a 2017 launch, hopefully during the warm weather months, because as I've learned, people don't love taking the ferry as much in February, and we would like to launch when it's nice out. So we're looking forward to that. I know I've been moving quickly through all this. I look forward to answering a couple of questions this evening. I do want to point out that this website is a really great resource. It's nycedc.com. That's nycedc.com/ferry. It's also shown at the bottom of the map here if you want to just take a look there. That has all of the information about every route, about all of our stops. It has summary information. It has any news updates that we had. It also has all the environmental and scoping documents there, along with a list of meetings that we've been coordinating and attending. So let me stop there and offer the floor for questions.
Sure. So first I'd like to say thank you, James. That was an extremely thorough presentation. The borough president actually leaned over to me and said, he's a great presenter. So thank you for that. That was really a lot of great information and very
And we'll be happy to circulate so that people can spend a little bit more time with it as well.
But it was more about sort of how you added in the important information. You actually answered a lot of the questions I had in your presentation. I wasn't on the slide, so that's great. Just a couple of questions. So you may know the borough president, as you know, is an advocate of the five-borough ferry plan, specifically because of the access to the Rockaways. And you might not know, she did some advocacy work on the Gantry Park ferry landing, possibly the Center Boulevard. And I know that there was some questions from the community when you visited the Civic around the Center Boulevard versus the 44th Drive. And you talked about sort of the challenges of usage if you put it on 44th with the community, I believe, and Community Board 2 is here, so I don't want to speak for them, where they requested it versus where on Center, where there would be a more pleasant sort of pedestrian walk to the landing dock. Could you just talk a little bit about how it will work if you started out at Center and then move it to 44th,
Sure.
And what that means?
Absolutely, and then I think it would also be appropriate to open the floor just because we were talking about exactly this issue last night. So a couple of things that are worth mentioning there. 44th Drive itself right now, and if you've gone to Water's Edge Restaurant, you may not notice when you drive down there, but that is a challenging walk. If anyone has actually ever tried, there are no sidewalks. It's an existing industrial area, undeveloped at this juncture. And there are a lot of great opportunities coming down the pipeline. We know the owners of a lot of properties. We know we've worked with the development community, and their timeline similarly is not in that 3 to 4 year timeline. So while 44th Drive may have some great opportunities and in fact connect with different areas, what we're focusing on right now is really looking at that Center Boulevard location. And that location for us looks like an ideal spot for a number of reasons, not because it has the residential density right there to support it. Now, of course, there is sort of question of, well, is that just supporting the waterfront community? One of the things I flagged in the beginning was a real, one of the things we really learned from the East River Ferry is that close to 90% of our riders come from within a half-mile walking radius. People don't walk a mile in order to get to the ferry on a regular basis. I mean, people, especially our leisure riders, do come in from further away and will make a special trip to do so. But on the regular trips, we are really expecting it to be that very hyper-local area. These are unique neighborhoods. Of course, the 7 train continues to be a challenge, but what we want to do is really provide an opportunity for the waterfront communities there. But for the actual transition, when I was talking about the barge and the infrastructure that goes along with it, one of the great things is that the barge itself doesn't get thrown away. The spuds don't get thrown away, the gangway doesn't get thrown away. In fact, the only modifications that we're proposing for the upland would be to make a break in the fence and install that Coast Guard security gate. Other than that, you can take the gangway off, put the railing back, and you can actually move that landing. As far as how quickly you could physically move it, in the Rockaways, we were able to bring service there in under a week because you just floated in and spudded in. That was, again, flagging that that was a federally declared emergency, so no permitting, no environmental review. But physically, it can be done. And so we're really looking forward to working with the communities, working with Parks, and saying that we think this is where we should start with it, and we'd like to revisit that conversation in 3 to 5 years. And we can work with others to sort of nail that down if we want to get a little bit more specific.
I'm Lisa Deller from Community Board 2. I think in the a couple of times I've seen this presentation now, the comments that we've heard are really about the lack of accommodation for both pedestrian traffic, could be a disturbance to residents, noise from the ships like horns and things like that, that could be a disturbance, and the inadequacy of any kind of parking plan for that location. So if people did want to drive to take the ferry,